The issue of water in California is incredibly complicated and can be, pardon the pun, a little bit dry at times. One way to make it a bit easier to swallow, issue letter grades. That's just what researchers at UCLA have been doing. Next month, they'll release an environmental report card for water in LA County. And joining us now for a sneak preview is Cassie Rauser, director of UCLA's Sustainable LA Grand Challenge. Thank you so much for dropping by.
Thank you, Alex, for having me.
My understanding is that the last time you took an overall look at water in LA County like this was back in 2015. And I want to focus the bulk of our conversation on your more recent findings, but I think it's helpful to compare and contrast. So give me just the overview of what your findings were back in 2015.
So in 2015, the environmental report card actually looked at sustainability across a number of different topics. So we didn't just look at water.
Sure.
And in this report card, we are focused only on water, so we were able to be much more comprehensive. And we looked at a lot more what we call indicators of water in the region. So it's difficult to compare it because it's far more comprehensive. And the grade in 2015 for the topic of water was a C.
Yeah.
And in this one, we're a C+, so we're doing a little bit better, but still just above average.
Yeah. But as a parent, I know, right? A kid comes out with the grade, and even a C+, you're not all that pleased.
Exactly.
And you broke it down, since this really is the water report, you broke it down into several categories, and we are looking mostly at supply on this episode, and in that category, again, LA County gets a C+. Explain. So this is now the comment section of the report card, Cassie.
Yep.
Why a C+?
So a C+ with regard to supply and consumption is the topic area in this category. Is really because we haven't changed a lot since 2015, but we haven't changed a lot since we really started looking at this. So, as you may know, our water comes from hundreds of miles away for the most part, a majority of it anyway, about 60% of it for the county. And in order for the water supply to be a lot more resilient, it would need to be more local. And we have a lot of resources here that we are not using, and we just really haven't made a big shift. The county, like I said, is at about 60%. The city is importing up to 90, even sometimes a little bit more than 90% of the water from outside of the region. So this just isn't really sustainable.
No, it's not, and I feel like I'm just going to keep pushing that report card metaphor there. You get a grade in English, but then a lot of times it's broken down into things like grammar or spelling or reading comprehension, and you broke down this letter grade for supply, and part of the grade has to do with consumption.
Yep.
So, water is water, but what's our role in it?
So the overall demand for water has slightly decreased over the years from 2000 till now. And so that's positive. The percent of water that we're still importing hasn't really changed. And so with regard to consumption, what we saw, especially with the record drought that we had between 2012 and 2016, is we really did see people step up and reduce their water consumption. So once the drought was declared over, unfortunately, what we saw between 2016 and 2017 was a bit of an increase in consumption again. So as soon as the mandate wasn't there, and as soon as we didn't have the commercials and the notices along the freeway and all of the campaigns suggesting that we try to reduce our water intake, we saw it slip right back up.
Was that a surprise? Because I feel like it's like when you go to the dentist, right, and you're flossing and you're doing a great job and the dentist is great, but then if you don't go back for a while, then maybe you just slip because, is that just kind of almost expected now that we are officially out of drought?
Well, we are officially out of drought, but remember what we saw is, 2017 was a record wet year. 2018 was right back down to a very, very dry year. And 2019, again, is pretty wet. Yeah. So I think what we're going to see moving forward is this sort of flip-flop between wet and dry years.
Yeah.
And we're going to see precipitation come in these, sort of spurts, right? And then followed by drought. And so our climate pattern is really changing. And so unless we really make water conservation a way of life here, I think we're going to have a little bit of trouble when it's fluctuating like this.
And there's lots of discussions about how we best do that. One of the things that comes up is pricing. It's a lot like gas, right? When it starts to get really expensive, people think differently about how often they're in their cars. What did you and your colleagues find when it comes to water pricing?
Well, water pricing is difficult because, well, we all need water to survive. So, I mean, this is really kind of an equity issue, and you don't want to price water in such a way that, people can't afford their water. And this is super complicated for LA County because we have nearly 350 different water distributors or suppliers here. And so they all have very wide ranges in the pricing that they use. So some people are paying far more than others just because of the distributor of water. And so there's been talk about price tiering, right? So that if you're using a certain amount, you're going to pay a little bit more. So, these are things that should be revisited and definitely could be useful.
But not going to be politically popular.
Not going to be popular. And right now, actually, people are paying quite a bit for water. So about 5 million single-family home residents in LA County, which is about half the population, is paying over $1,000 a year for water already. And that's a real economic burden for a lot of families.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to drinking water quality, in your report, you gave LA County a B+ / incomplete. Can you break that one down for us?
Yeah, so that's one of our highest grades. It is the highest grade other than the incomplete part.
Yeah.
Which means you didn't turn in all your homework, right?
Yeah. Well, what does that mean too? I was curious about that.
Yeah. So with regard to the B+ first, LA really delivers exceptional water. So there are really very few violations, and it impacts a very, very small part of the population. Now, that's when you're looking at the major types of violations. So the drinking water is actually perfectly fine to drink here. Now, the reason it's incomplete is because what we're not measuring is, kind of the brown color, the stinky water, the bad tasting water. So there are a number of reports of this type of water throughout the region, but because there's no data on that, we really couldn't adequately look at that, but we know there's a lot of well-documented accounts of it.
Yeah.
So that's not necessarily harmful to your health, which is why it doesn't fall into the other category that we were able to look at, but it makes people have a perception, of course, that the water is not good. And nobody should be drinking stinky and bad-tasting water anyway. Yeah. So incomplete because we don't have the type of data that measures that.
One thing I know that you did look at when it comes to quality is lead in school tap water, which I have a feeling is something that our viewers would be interested in. What were your findings there?
Right. So lead, of course, is a very important topic, especially nationally, and people have a lot of concern in that space. And the way that water is tested is it's tested after treatment, not at your tap, right? So we don't know what's coming out of our tap. And so this was really a really great step in the right direction when the state mandated that the water at the tap had to be tested in schools, and that the water agencies were responsible for doing this. And so of the schools that have been tested, I think about 50% of them have already been tested. It was a pretty small percent that actually had lead findings at the tap. And of those that were found, I think 80% of them had already been remedied. So it seems that they're testing, they're remedying the situation quickly, and where that lead is coming from really is on sort of the more private and, or in this case, public land, right? So like I said, the water's tested after treatment, it flows through the pipes, but once the pipe is on the school ground, those pipes may not have been changed out, they may be old and contain lead, just like on any of our own private property. That's not the responsibility of the utility.
I am smelling a Spectrum News 1 reporter story in the future. Cassie Rauser, thank you so much for bringing us the information from this report card.
Great. Thank you for having me.
Stuff. Viewers, if you were to give this region a letter grade when it comes to water, what would it be and why? Let us know. You can email us at insidetheissues@voa.com. issues@charter.com, or find us on Twitter. We are at Issues on One. I'm at Alex Cohen in LA. And coming up, we hear from the former chair of California's Water Board on the often messy intersection between politics and water policy. Don't go away.